In 1974, in a small coastal county jail in North Carolina, a young black woman named Joan Little changed legal history with her act of self-defense. Her trial united civil rights activists, feminists, and opponents of the death penalty, and forced the United States to confront how race, gender, and power intersect in the justice system. This is not fiction. This is real. A real case, with real stakes, of a woman facing a death sentence, a man who abused his authority, and a nation watching. In the next few minutes, we will trace Joan Little's story, her life before the incident, what happened in jail, how the trial unfolded, and why her acquittal became a landmark for black women's justice. Let's begin.
Welcome to Black HerTruth.
Joan Little was born on May 8, 1954, in Washington, North Carolina. She was the eldest of 6 children and grew up in a poor, segregated community. As a teenager, she worked in menial jobs, including waiting tables and working in the tobacco industry, to support herself. By the early 1970s, Little had several run-ins with the law. Between December 1973 and January 1974, she was arrested multiple times on charges such as shoplifting and breaking and entering. On June 4, 1974, she was convicted on 3 counts of breaking and entering and larceny. Rather than being sent to a women's correctional facility, Little insisted on staying in the Beaufort County Jail in Washington, North Carolina, the same small, local jail where she felt more connected to her community and where she hoped to raise money for bond. But the jail had no female matrons, all her jailers were white men. This segment of this story sets the stage for what was to come, a young black woman, vulnerable in a system stacked against her, yet determined to survive. On the early morning of August 27, 1974, a shocking discovery was made in the Beaufort County Jail. 62-year-old white jailer Clarence Alligood lay dead in Joan Little's cell. He was naked from the waist down, and had been stabbed 11 times with an ice pick, the very same tool he kept in his desk. Even more disturbingly, the autopsy found semen on his leg, a grim sign that sexual activity had taken place. But where was Joan Little? She was missing. According to her own account later in court, Alligood had come into her cell that night, carrying his ice pick, and threatened her, forcing her into sexual acts. She testified that he had entered 3 times between about 10 p.m. and 3 a.m., pressing her, coercing her. Joan said that when he forced her to perform oral sex, he was physically controlling her, and that she was terrified, not only of what he might do, but of the ice pick he held. During one of these moments, after he climaxed, his grip on the ice pick loosened. She seized it, struggled with him, and stabbed him repeatedly. According to her testimony, she acted to protect her life. Her defense later argued that this was not an impulsive act of violence, but self-defense. Alligood, they said, had a known history of abusing female inmates, giving gifts, magazines, snacks in exchange for sexual favors. For Little, that night was a vivid example of how power, race, and gender intersected to threaten her very survival. After the killing, Joan Little went on the run. She avoided capture for more than a week. During that time, law enforcement reportedly considered invoking North Carolina's outlaw statute, which would have allowed officers to treat her almost like a wanted criminal with shoot-to-kill authority. But rather than stay hidden forever, Little made a deliberate decision. She turned herself in. On September 3, 1974, she surrendered to the State Bureau of Investigation in Raleigh. Her surrender was not done in secret. According to courtroom testimony and later interviews, she emerged from her defense lawyer Jerry Paul's car and spoke briefly to the press. She said, "I ran because it was self-defense. If the authorities had gotten to me before, they would have fouled me." She believed that if she stayed in Beaufort County, where the crime happened, her life would be in serious danger. Her case immediately drew national attention. Civil rights activists, feminists, and anti-death penalty groups rallied behind her. Rosa Parks helped found a Joan Little Defense Committee in Detroit, and protests were held across the U.S. with people carrying signs like "Free Joan Little" and "Self-defense is not a crime." Her defense team also scored an early legal win. They successfully petitioned to have her trial moved from Beaufort County to Raleigh, arguing she could not get a fair trial in her home county. This change of venue was a major turning point, and pointed to how deeply racial and gender biases played into the case. The media coverage was intense and often polarizing. Some outlets portrayed Alligood as a heroic jailer dying in the line of duty, but Little's supporters challenged that narrative fiercely. Meanwhile, her legal defense was bolstered by scientific jury selection, a relatively new method at the time in which they analyzed potential jurors' attitudes to find those more likely to empathize with her story. In the months leading up to the trial, Little's case became a symbol, not just of her own fight, but of larger struggles, the intersection of race, gender, and power in the criminal justice system. Her words captured this sentiment: "My life is not in the hands of the court. My life is in the hands of the people." As Joan Little's trial approached in early 1975, her legal team knew the stakes were extraordinary. The county had never seen a black woman accused of killing a white man in self-defense, and racial tensions in Beaufort County ran high. A critical early battle was jury selection. Her defense lawyers argued that no fair trial could occur in Beaufort County, citing the widespread prejudice and the potential for jurors to side automatically with a white male jailer over a young black woman. The court agreed, moving the trial to Raleigh, North Carolina, a more urban setting thought to offer a less biased jury pool. During jury selection, the defense team implemented innovative attitude questionnaires to identify jurors who were more likely to understand a woman defending herself against sexual assault. This method, relatively rare at the time, helped ensure that the jury would not automatically be swayed by ingrained racial or gender biases. Meanwhile, public support for Joan Little continued to grow. Feminist groups, civil rights organizations, and students across the country organized rallies, wrote letters to newspapers, and held educational events highlighting her case. The media spotlight put pressure on the court system to handle the case with transparency. The prosecution sought the death penalty, arguing that the stabbing of Alligood went beyond self-defense. They portrayed Little as a cold-blooded killer. However, the defense prepared meticulously. They presented evidence of Alligood's history of abusing female inmates, including testimonies from other women who had been harassed or coerced. By the time the trial began, the tension was palpable. The courtroom in Raleigh was packed with reporters, activists, and observers from across the country. Every move would be scrutinized, and the outcome had the potential to set a national precedent. Joan Little herself remained composed. She understood that her case was larger than herself. It would test how the legal system treats women, particularly black women, who fight to survive against abusive authority figures. The stage was set for a historic trial, one that would challenge entrenched notions of race, gender, and justice in America. The trial of Joan Little began in June 1975 in Raleigh, North Carolina, and immediately drew national attention. The prosecution argued that Little's actions went beyond self-defense, portraying her as a calculating murderer who planned the stabbing in advance. However, the defense strategy was clear: Little had acted to protect herself from a man who repeatedly threatened and sexually abused her. They called attention to the fact that she was trapped in a cell with a dangerous man, with no female staff to protect her. Witnesses for the defense included former inmates who testified that Alligood had a history of coercing women into sexual acts, often threatening punishment if they refused. Medical experts corroborated that the stabbing occurred during a struggle, supporting Little's claim of self-defense. Joan Little also testified in her own defense. She described the fear and terror she felt as Alligood repeatedly entered her cell, emphasizing the life-threatening nature of the situation. She explained that the ice pick was seized only as a last resort, in the moment she believed her life was in danger. Public support remained strong outside the courtroom. Demonstrators marched, held vigils, and organized educational events about sexual violence in prisons. Feminists argued that a conviction could set a dangerous precedent, punishing women who defended themselves against sexual assault. After weeks of testimony, cross-examinations, and arguments, the trial concluded. The jury retired, leaving the nation and the activists who had rallied around Joan Little anxiously waiting for a decision that could reshape the legal landscape for self-defense cases involving women, especially women of color. On August 15, 1975, after a tense trial, the jury returned a verdict of not guilty. Joan Little had been acquitted of first-degree murder, becoming the first woman in the United States to use the defense of self-defense against a sexual assault charge in such a high-profile case and be acquitted. The courtroom erupted. Supporters, many of whom had campaigned for her freedom, cheered. Feminist groups and civil rights activists hailed it as a historic victory for women's rights, black justice, and the anti-death penalty movement. National media coverage was extensive. Some outlets praised the acquittal as a triumph for justice, while others criticized it, reflecting deep-seated racial and gender tensions. Joan herself later reflected that the trial had exposed the vulnerabilities of black women in the justice system and emphasized the importance of public advocacy and solidarity. The case set a legal precedent. It was widely cited in discussions of self-defense law, especially in cases involving sexual assault. The acquittal also contributed to the growing awareness of sexual abuse in prisons and the need for female staff in correctional facilities. Beyond the courtroom, Joan Little's story inspired activism across the country. Groups like the National Organization for Women, NOW, and other feminist collectives used her case to highlight systemic injustices faced by women, particularly black women, in both the legal system and society. Her victory became more than personal, it was symbolic. It demonstrated that with courage, legal strategy, and public support, marginalized individuals could challenge systems of power, confront entrenched racism and sexism, and win. Joan Little's acquittal in 1975 did more than free a young woman from an unjust death sentence. It challenged systemic racism and gender bias in the American legal system. For the first time, a black woman successfully used self-defense against sexual assault in a high-profile trial, setting a precedent that reverberates in law schools and courtrooms today. Her case also shone a light on the dangers faced by women in prisons, prompting conversations about the need for female staff in correctional facilities and stricter policies to prevent sexual abuse. Beyond the legal sphere, Joan became a symbol of resistance, courage, and advocacy. Feminist and civil rights groups celebrated her as a hero who challenged the intersectional forces of race, gender, and class. Her story also serves as a teaching moment, a reminder that the justice system can fail the most vulnerable, and that public awareness, activism, and solidarity are often necessary to achieve fairness. Scholars, lawyers, and activists continue to reference her case when discussing self-defense law, sexual assault, and racial injustice in America. Today, Joan Little's legacy endures. She represents resilience in the face of oppression, the power of legal strategy backed by community support, and the critical importance of fighting for justice, even when the odds seem insurmountable. Her story reminds us, self-defense is not a crime, and the fight against systemic injustice requires courage, advocacy, and the determination to stand up for what is right. Thank you for watching. If you found this story impactful and want to help keep these kinds of stories from being forgotten, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware, stay with us.